here to talk to you about a different part of the community, the women's community. I run this organization that has 1,800 members across the state of Michigan. And a lot of us have been really surprised to discover that the mainstream media discovered in this last week that we're half of the workforce, you know? It's like, you know, it's like, really? You don't say. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit about what's on everybody's minds as this surprising information unfolds across the state and across the nation. If you've been watching, you know, Maria Shriver has a Women's Nation that's been on a week-long thing on TV, and there's a lot of other stuff going on. She's having a big conference in California, and there's other research studies that are coming out. But I wanted to share with you some of the data, because yes, we're half of the workforce. But it is kind of all about the numbers, and there have been some trends that have been building up over the last few years that I'd like to share. And one of them is that while we're half of the workforce, we're still in the single digits when it comes to boards of directors roles or top executive roles at most of the major companies in this state and in the country. We do some research that we just unveiled this week. We do it every 2 years at Inforum that found that women are still in single digits at Michigan's 100 largest public companies that are headquartered in the state. And so the question kind of becomes, why? You know, we're half of the labor force, you know, so kind of what's going on here? And there have been some surprising things that are popping up, and I really think that we're at one of those points. If you think about a glacier pre-global warming, not where it's melting faster than it's advancing, but if you think about that glacier kind of slowly moving and changing everything in its path, I think that's the place where we are. We're at kind of that classic tipping point. And here's why. I think women are about to step into more power than they've seen before in this country anyway, and in this part of the world. There have been now over a half a dozen major studies that have found that companies that employ more women at the senior levels and are better at attracting, retaining, and promoting women to senior levels make more money. Yes, I agree. There was just one of them. There was a 17-year study that they did out at Pepperdine that looked at 215 of Fortune 500 companies and found that any way you want to measure profitability, whether it's assets, revenue, or equity, companies with more women were more profitable. So when you start to talk about diversity in the workforce, lots of times people start shutting down. But when you start talking about how do you make money, people start listening and paying attention. So that's been documented. The other thing is our perspective and our management style is hot. We're known as the people who, by and large, bring a little bit more of a sense of consensus, a little bit more of a sense of involvement, a little bit less of direct conflict or competition in the workforce, a little bit more collaboration. This is about the time when there's a lot of guys in the audience, I sense a lot of, you know, yeah, right. You know, we can do that too. And yes, you can do that too. But I think it is true. There's a lot of research that shows that as a group, women bring more of that style to the workforce. And it's often been to our detriment. It's often blocked us from promotions. But companies are waking up to the fact that that's the future. Just look at the change in, well, I don't want to get too political, but look at the change between our previous president and our current president and how that different style has been received in the rest of the world, where it isn't, you know, the United States knows absolutely everything and we're here to save you. It's more, you know, hey, let's get together and talk about this stuff and figure out something that makes sense. I think it's more that kind of a style that's hot. Companies have woken up to this fact and they want more of it in those companies. The other big thing, women hold the power of the purse. Women do most of the buying. 83% of consumer purchases are made by women. We're directly purchasing 54% of the automobiles in this country. We influence 85% of those purchase decisions. So if you're doing just about anything, whether it's selling a service, whether it's selling a product, you want to have women thought leaders at the table to talk about, to be able to help inform your decisions on those issues. And then I know this one's a really hard sell in Michigan and in Motown these days, but there's actually a talent shortage that's looming. When we get through this recession, and we will get through this recession and come out stronger, I really believe one of the earlier speakers was talking about where the next economy is coming from, and it is not coming from the usual suspects. It's going to be coming from all of those other businesses and companies that are bubbling up out there. But there's a talent shortage looming, and it's just demographics. There are 6 million baby boomers that, even though they may be delaying their retirements because the markets are down, they are going to retire. And all of the estimates show that even if this country continues offshoring jobs, even if we have a continued slowdown, there are not going to be enough people coming up behind to fill those jobs and those opportunities. And guess what? Guess who's earning the college degrees? 58% of the undergraduate degrees and 60% of the graduate degrees that are granted in this nation are going to women. And so I think that there's a lot of other interesting things that are cropping up. Some of you may have seen some of the press right after the economic meltdown started happening, Lehman Brothers. There's open speculation in some of the media that if it had been Lehman Brothers and sisters, maybe we wouldn't have had the meltdown that we had. And it gets back to, yes, men as a group are more likely to take risks. Women are more conservative. Guess what? We don't need either or, but we kind of need both and it can help us avoid some of those challenges. There's also a really cool thing that I was just reading about this week. At University of Michigan, there's actually a professor there who came up with a diversity formula that shows that if you have two groups of decision makers, one group of all really high-performing, super talented people, but they're all homogeneous in terms of gender or race or age, and you have a different group that may not be all high performers, but that are diverse, that you always get better decisions out of the diverse group, even though you have high performers clustered in this group. And this professor at U of M actually came up with the mathematical formula that demonstrates this. I'm so sure there's somebody in this room who could work that formula and tell us about it. It wouldn't be me. So that stuff is starting to get people's attention, that this whole issue of having a more inclusive group is more important than we think. And then how many women, so I guess the other question that I hear a lot of people talking about within the women's community is, so how many women are enough? What exactly do you want? And how many women are enough? And there's actually been McKinsey and Ernst & Young and a couple of other groups did some really interesting research in Europe that showed that in companies that have at least three women in top leadership roles are 40% more profitable. So there's actually starting to be some numbers behind the stuff that we've all kind of talked about all along. Globally, how are we, what is all of this going to mean? I think that what it means is as that glacier keeps moving, things are really going to change. And the ways that they're going to change are going to be better for men and for women. One of the things that I hear from women all the time is their number one priority as they get together in our little communities in this area is they want flexibility over their work life. They want flexibility to allow for families and to have another life outside of your work life. I think that women are now at the point where they're getting to have enough clout in the workforce where they can command some of that. It's incredibly expensive to lose talent. And women who finally get clear about what it is they want can go into those environments and begin to change those environments, begin to make the rules change at companies. And guess what? This benefits everybody. It doesn't benefit just them. So I think that one of the ways that women are going to have a huge impact as we go forward is that. One of the other things that I wanted to say, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Grameen Bank with Muhammad Yunus. He won the 2006, I think it was 2006, Nobel Peace Prize. And what the Grameen Bank was it was the first major experiment globally in microlending. And he went into incredibly poor countries and would lend somebody enough money to buy a goat or lend somebody enough money to get a sewing machine. Just small businesses that bit by bit can help to change the world. What's happened is there's been such a groundswell globally around all of this. The US State Department actually got heavily involved, and what they started to see was that if you're going into and trying to support change, real economic change at a country, you should do two things. You should educate the women, and you should loan money to the women. Because when you do that, that plays out throughout the whole community. So how women are going to change the world, I think that we're going to, as we move through and we start to get more real clout, I think we're going to start to see the institutions change around us. And we're going to start to see more opportunities for families, for all of us, men and women, to have the time we need to follow our passions as well as have those careers. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.